Hello, and welcome to Mr. Natural's Music School here in San Francisco in the Haight-Ashbury district. We have been talking about my music theory book, which you can now find on Amazon.com, called Music Theory Decoded, Strictly by the Numbers. I use a method of intervals, which I use to teach people to read and write music with, and it's quite successful and simplifies music theory in the most advanced ways. What we've been doing is going through the book piece by piece, or chapter by chapter, showing you how to spell with the ABCs and adding in your sharps and flats in the proper places so you can learn to conquer the music theory that most people have. Now out there on the internet there's something like 6 million websites that teach music theory, and I think there's 800,000 lessons on YouTube that teach music theory. Everybody teaches it exactly the same way. But here, we do it completely different. We use the intervals, which are the bones behind the spelling of the ABC, to explain these patterns which come up continuously over and over and over. And then we use those intervals as a way to ferret out and figure out what the correct spellings would be. The other thing is, because the bones are very simple, if you can count from 1 to 7 or 7 back down to 1, you can do the music theory that we're teaching around here quite easily. Since the 2,000 years of tradition have been using the ABCs, that's what you'll find on the 6 million websites out there on the internet. That's what you'll find on the 1 million sites, YouTube sites. So there's no reason for me to cover all that stuff again. Although we will be showing you something that you will not find on any of those, which is the fact that theoretically this whole process can be pushed to an extreme. And by an extreme I mean there are 7 sharps, 7 flats, and the neutral C, which means there are 15 spellings for something like the major scale that is taught out there. In order to get your teaching credential in most states, you'll have to take a test, and you'll have to have memorized those 15 scales. Now, I don't know if you've ever memorized the 12 times tables, but it took about 2 years in grammar school to learn to do that. And so it takes about that long or longer to learn your ABCs, the 15 spellings of the ABC. 12 of those chromatic tones are on the piano, and the other 3 are what we call enharmonic or aliases of other scales. Although there are 15, it turns out that theoretically on the piano itself there are actually 17, because you have 7 white notes and 5 black notes which have 2 names each, which is 10 plus 7 or 17. So there are 2 keys which are out of favor that nobody likes to spell because they're too difficult. For instance, B flat on the piano has 2 flats, but A sharp on the piano, as we saw in my last video, has 10 sharps. And that's just too much for most people's heads. Most people cannot read past 4 sharps on the staff. And because they're using the ABC system, this is very complicated and cumbersome. But using the interval system, they all read exactly the same. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And a note can start anywhere. Now this is relevant because on instruments like the violin, the viola, the cello, the stand-up bass, non-fretted guitars, ouds, and various other instruments which do not have frets or fixed positions, you can start on any note you want, anywhere that you want, and then build your scale. So theoretically, if we go beyond the frozen keys of the keyboard, for instance, and we study something like the violin, we find out that there are 35 spellings for the major scale, and that's what we're doing here. Now last time we covered the A scale, the A sharp scale, and the A double sharp scale, and this time we'll be doing A flat, and A double flat. Let me zoom you in here a little bit so you can see. These spellings, granted, are theoretical, but we do, in music theory, we do use these. These do come up quite often. You see, a scale is named by whatever position on the staff it's on. And if I place here on the 1, 2, 3rd space here, this note, below the staff is a space, then the F position, first space within the staff, then the second space within the staff, which I call the third space. There's the fourth space, fifth space, and a sixth space above the staff. Again, something no one else teaches. You'll see here on A, we have a normal A. We can add a sharp to that A and have an A sharp. We can add a flat and have an A flat. But in music, we also have things called double sharps, which are usually represented by an X with dots in it, or with two sharp symbols. Over here, we also have A double flat. Last week, we spelled the A, and we discovered that the A scale has 3 sharps. We also, when we spelled the A sharp scale, we discovered that it had 10 sharps, which is one reason why no one spells A sharp and prefers to only see that note on the keyboard as B flat. Also, we have A double sharp, which has 17 sharps, and that's theoretically as far as you can go. And in this case, you'll have double sharps and triple sharps. When you get into triple sharps, the whole system comes back and resets to C, or back to neutral again. So we normally don't go beyond 2 or double sharps. We have A flat and A double flat, and we're going to explore today and find out how many flats each of these in the key has, as well as these sharps here on A. So the tool that we use in order to do this is a device which I call the intervalometer. And this is an intervalometer. It's simply a piece of paper that has the numbers 1 through 7 on it, with spaces, with these little space markings here, these colors, which are the in-between notes that you ignore. So if you're playing a scale, it would just be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And these little spaces in between represent the distances of 2 chromatic tones between each one, or they're exactly next to each other, as in the case of the numbers 3 and 4, and 7 and 1 in major scale are exactly next to each other. This intervalometer can be found in the book, Music Theory Decoded, in the back of the book. You can cut that page out, and you can assemble this, glue this together, and fit this behind the black keys on your keyboard. We call this an intervalometer, which means an interval meter, but the kids in our class call it a slider because you put it behind the black keys where it rests, and then you can slide it to the various keys that you want to learn to spell or play in. Today, what I have done is I built a little intervalometer here for us. I built a keyboard and put an intervalometer up here. And let's zoom in so we can take a look and see how this works. The intervalometer is simply a keyboard laid out with the intervalometer scale placed here. And what you do is, in the case of the key of A, which we're going to do here first, you simply have 3 simple rules. First, we take the intervalometer, the number 1, and we put it over the A, and then paste it down so we can now see the numbers and where they belong. These numbers are the ratios for the major scale, or the distances between each of the things, the inches, if you will, for building the scale. These are the letter names, and in order to spell, what we do is the first thing you always do is you put your first note down on the line or space which is designated with that letter name. So in this case here, 2 lines and a space up is where A would be, because this line here is G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, and what we do is we then label every line and every space after that in sequence, going all the way up until we come back to our letter name. So A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then the high A again. The next thing we do is we lay out the alphabet, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, in order. Now the important thing in getting your spelling right is, 1, we do not skip. We don't go from a C to an E and skip over the D. We have to use every letter name in sequence consecutively. Secondly, we do not use a letter name twice. You might look at spellings sometimes and think that you've got something like a C and a C sharp, but it should be C and D flat. So we do not have two letter names in a row. The alphabet must be laid out in sequence without any skipping or any double notating, and it must always be A, B, C, D, F, G. And what we do is we modify that spelling with sharps or flats in order to tell us what the spelling for that particular scale would be. Now, in the case of A, I've set up the intervalometer here for A. We take the first letter name, which would be the first step of the scale, the number 1, and it is on A, and the 1 goes right to the white key. So there are no sharps or flats to be used in this spelling. The next thing is the letter B. So we look at the letter B, and we will see that the number 2, which would be the second degree of the scale, is right over the B. Therefore, B neutral is the name of this particular position. The next thing is to go to the number 3, or C. And in the case of C, you'll notice here that the C does not attach to the number 3, that the number 3 is on the black key above the letter C. And because the number 3 appears above the letter C, we have to add one chromatic tone to the spelling of the C, which we call a sharp, and we place a sharp on the C. So we have a C sharp. The next is to go to the number 4. And on the number 4, you'll see it's right over the letter name D. So D neutral. Then we go to the number 5. And the number 5 is right over the E. So it's E neutral. We go to the number 6, and you'll see the 6 is higher than the F. Here is the F, and we have to go up a half a tone to get to the number 6. So F needs to have a sharp put on it to modify it into the scale. We then go to the number 7, which we'll see here is G. The 7 is above G, one chromatic tone. So again, we need to add a sharp to that letter name in order to modify it, one sharp. And we now have A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, and G sharp. And we would add these sharps to the staff so they can be globally affect the scale. So first we put here on the F line a sharp, then we put down here on the C space a sharp, and then on the top space where the G is at, the G sharp. So 3 sharps equals A. But I would like you to notice that in the numbers, it's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So if I were to get an A on the piano, da, da, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That's all. The numbers would be the same. But for spelling, it would be A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A. Now let's take a look at A flat. With A flat, again, we put a simple circle where the A is and put a flat in front of it. We label everything 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, and then we lay out the alphabet again in order A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Since we are using flats this time, we want to reset the intervalometer to be a half a step below the A, showing us the flats here. So now we've moved it from A to A flat, where the number 1 would be. And on the first letter name, here A, we place a flat. We now go to the number 2 on the intervalometer, and the number 2 on the intervalometer is below the letter name B, one chromatic tone. So B flat. So we have to put a flat on the B here. We then go to the letter name C, which is number 3. Here's 3, here's C, and you'll see the 3 is right over the C. So therefore, we do not have to modify that letter name. There is a C neutral in this scale. We then go to the D, and we go from the 3 to the number 4. The number 4, you will notice, is below the D. So we would have to add a flat to the D. So here we go to the D line, put a flat in front of that. We then go to the number 5, which is E, and we look at the E, and we see that the number is below the letter name, E. So we then have to add a flat to the E to spell that correctly, E flat. So we will put a flat here on the E, and here on the staff we will put a flat in front of that. We then go to the next letter, which is F, which is the number 6. And you'll see F and the number 6 align up perfectly, so we can leave that one alone. Then we go to the next, which is the G, which is the number 7, and we look at the 7 and it aligns perfectly over the G, therefore we just leave it alone. So now let's take a look at our spelling. We have A flat, B flat, C, D flat, E flat, F, G, and then back to A flat again. So there is 1, 2, 3, there are 4 flats in this spelling. And again, we would put them onto the staff starting with B flat. We would put a flat on B flat. We would then put a flat on the E flat, B flat, E flat. We would then put a flat on the A flat, and we would put a flat on the D flat. So we would have B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat. There would be 4 flats for the A flat scale. Now, this is correct. In the A scale, there were 3 sharps. In the A flat scale, there are 4 flats. Now, let's go theoretically one more step to the double flat. If we start out with A double flat, we now have to take the intervalometer and move it back one more step. Now, some of you will say, well, now the number 1 is over the G. Yes, but the letter name, the name G and A double flat are indeed the same thing. And the reason we don't call it the G scale is because visually our eye sees A with 2 flats on it. And although it might be the letter name G on the piano, it turns out A double flat would be slightly higher in pitch on the violin than the G. And in order to spell this theoretical scale correctly and to play it correctly on a non-fretted instrument, we have to call it by what it looks like. And we have to modify the ABCs to accommodate this, and then we'll add up the number of flats involved, and that will be the correct spelling for A double flat. So again, here's A, and the first is the number 1. We have a flat, flat, or 1 semitone and another chromatic semitone there. So that would be 1, 2 semitones below, which is the 2 flats that we put on the A. We then go to the letter name B, and we point at the number 2. You'll see here B, flat, flat. So in order to get the number 2, I would have to add 2 flats to the B to correct this. And the reason we call it B double flat and do not call it A is because the note itself is appearing on the B line. So we do what the eye says, not what we theoretically think is true on the keyboard. Also, the B double flat is higher in pitch than the A on the keyboard. Let's go to the next one, which is C. We look at C, and C should be the number 3. So we look at C, and we see that it has a 4 over it. If we go down to the number 3, we're going down to what would be called B, but this we would have to call C flat, not B. So 1 flat has to be added on the C. And again here on the C line, we put a single flat in front of the note. We now go to the next number, which is 4, which is the letter D. We look at D and we see we have to go down 1, 2 flats. So again, D double flat, D flat, flat. And on the line, we put 2 flats in front of the D. It's D double flat. It is not C, because double flat D is higher in pitch than C. We then go to the next step, which is the number 5, or E. We look at the E and we see that 1, 2 semitones below is where we find the number 5. So we have to add E flat, flat. So E has double flat on it as well. And again, on the staff here where we have the E, we would put flat, flat. We then go to the next number, which is the number 6, and it would be F. And we look at F and we see that 6 is 1 chromatic tone below, sitting on the E. So F flat. So we put a flat on the F, and we move on to the number 7, which is G. Here is the G, and you'll see that there is a single flat to get from the G to the number 7. So there is 1 flat on the G. And here on the staff, the space above the staff, we put a single flat on that. And then we're back to A double flat. So now let's count them up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There are 10 flats to the key of A double flat. So let's check that again. A double flat, B double flat, C flat, D double flat, E double flat, F flat, G flat, and then A double flat. So 2, 4, 5, 7, 9, 10, 11. I knew that was. There are 11 flats. 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. There are 11 flats for the A double flat. Sorry about that, I miscounted my flats. 11 flats for A double flat. So here we have now spelled the theoretical limits of the note A. You'll notice that there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 possible notes on the A line. A double flat, A sharp, and A double sharp. The A is 3 sharps. The A sharp is 10 sharps. The A double sharp is 17 sharps. The A flat has 4 flats, and the A double flat has 11 flats. Since there are 5 notes that can happen on the A line, there can be 5 notes with sharps, double sharps, flats, and double flats on each and every single line of the staff. Therefore, theoretically, it is possible to have 5 times 7, or 35 possible spellings of the major scale. There is also the blues scale. There's the natural minor scale, the harmonic minor scale, and the melodic minor scale, which gives us a total of 5 possibilities: major, blues, natural minor, harmonic minor, and a melodic minor. So 35 times 5 would be 175 possible spellings for the 5 different scales which are normally used in writing music. To memorize the 175 is almost mind-boggling. But with the use of the intervalometer here, and simply placing it behind your piano, the spelling is done for you. And what your eye is seeing on the staff will agree with the correct spelling, regardless of how far theoretically we push this system. Well, thank you once again for your patience, and you will not find this anywhere else on the internet. Of the 6 million websites that you can find out there on Google, of the 1 million YouTube sites, there is nobody, absolutely nobody, it goes beyond the 15 scales, even though there are 17 on the keyboard. Let's not forget E flat and D sharp. With D sharp also has 9 sharps, and nobody learns to spell the D sharp scale. No one learns to spell the A sharp scale, even though they exist on the piano. And there has been music that has been written in those keys. Therefore, that music is almost never played or performed at all in public. And when we talk about music theory, I, as a composer, writing and having to translate things into other keys for other instruments, we come up with these sharps and double sharps and flats and double flats all the time. And in the case of something like A sharp, where you actually have triple sharps, you have 3 triple sharps and the rest are double sharps. So these spellings are theoretically possible. They're easy enough to figure out. You can just do it mechanically with the intervalometer, which you will find in my book on Amazon.com, Music Theory Decoded. Also, we're starting a new channel called Strictly by the Numbers. This is Music by Interval site. And you will find over on the new site, Strictly by the Numbers, we are doing this numerically only. And you'll find that it's much, much simpler to learn to read and write music using just the number system. Since all these scales are read the same way, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, the A flat would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, the A double flat would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, the A sharp would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and the A double sharp would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All you simply do is on your violin or your viola or your cello, put your finger where that letter name starts, and then get the distances of your fingers in the correct spots to play those scales, and you're playing those scales. If you have to read or write that music on the staff, then you have to use this system to find out how many sharps or flats there are so you can get the spellings correct. And especially when we do things like the harmonic minor scale or the melodic minor scale, in which going up, the numbers 6 and 7 are naturally sharp, and coming down, they're naturally flatted. So they have 2 different spellings depending on which direction the melody is moving. And these things are almost impossible to memorize without understanding this number pattern. If you understand this interval pattern, which is the bones behind my flesh, that is the same. Every body out there has 206 bones in their body, and they all pretty much attach the same way. If you can see the skeleton and get the skeleton proportions correct, you can then add the muscle, the sinew, and the skin and draw anybody. And if you take a good class in drawing, in anatomy, you will learn how to do this, to get down to the bone structure. It's possible for forensic scientists to find the skull of a human being, and then a forensic scientist, sculptor, can then put the muscles and the sinew and the skin based on simple formulas, just like this intervalometer, and build that skull up and make a very good lifelike rendering of who that person actually what that person actually looked like. Without the ability to understand how the muscles and the sinew and the skin go onto the bones, it would be impossible to do. So this is, the intervalometer is essentially the skeleton which is behind, or the formula, the function, which is behind all the spellings of these things. And if you know how to use the intervalometer, it will do the thinking for you like a slide rule or a calculator, and it will help you get your spellings correct for anything, no matter how theoretically abstract it becomes. And that is why on Strictly by the Numbers website, we are not going to talk ABC except to mention a reference point that we may start. We'll teach you how to play guitar, flutes, clarinets, banjos, stringed instruments, ukuleles, keyboards, brass instruments, trumpet, trombone, tuba, baritone. Every musical instrument, there are 5 basic instruments. You have drums, you have woodwinds, you have brass, you have keyboards, and you have strings. And we'll take and show how all 5 of those instruments can be theoretically used. This intervalometer can be theoretically used to figure out the spellings, and then all you have to do is think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, memorize the fingering pattern, and just start playing. You can then learn to read by the interval patterns, which we will teach you how to do on Strictly by the Numbers. And we'll train your eyeball and we'll train your ear to hear and see those interval patterns. We'll show you where do or the number 1 is on the staff with any clef that exists, and you'll be able to just start reading music in one key and transposing it by playing it in a scale in another key on your musical instrument. And you'll find transposition to be quite natural and organic. Any book in any key can be read with the same pattern, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and you can play any other key on any instrument you wish, and you will automatically transpose that music into the key that you are actually playing or sounding. So thank you again, and welcome to Mr. Natural's Music School in Haight-Ashbury, San Francisco. Bye-bye.